Maine. Call the meeting to order and stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you everybody for being here. Dave is sick, so we're not gonna be able to cover any of his stuff, but and looks like we don't have a quorum for BZA again, so just Tom and Diane are here for BZA. We're still on the hunt for 2 more people for BZA. I've talked to several people asking them if they'd be interested, and I've gotten a lot of polite, I'll think about it. I did get one, absolutely not. So, but anyway, I keep asking different people as I run into folks in town and stuff. And
Well, I did talk to my neighbor.
Okay.
And she said she would be very interested. The issue with her is she's going to start having her grandson on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So she's trying to figure out if that one Tuesday she could figure something else out. But yes, she said she is interested.
Okay. Excellent.
She was having a hissy over, I don't know if you really want her, I'm kidding. She's a very nice lady. She's a very nice lady, but she was having a hissy over the ditch, the trees being taken out, and, worried about, we talked about that. She was worried about her well, and this and that, and I'm like, well, it's private owned, so it is what it is. You're gonna have to deal. And I told her what you said about the undergrowth and obstructing the creek and this and that, and she was like, oh, well, okay, so maybe that's a good thing. And I said, yeah, if it's obstructing the creek, it's not gonna get to your well.
If she can find, something to do with childcare for her grandson wants to join us on the first Tuesday of each month, that would be great. If, I don't know, how old is he? Is he old enough to come to me?
He's 2.
Okay.
No, he's a little bitty thing, and he doesn't like
I
people.
have my granddaughter here every once in a while.
Yeah.
She's 12.
She's
so
old,
Well, that's different, yeah. I would bring my grandson, he'll do his own thing,
So,
but
alright, very good. So no quorum for BZA, but we'll continue to work on getting some more folks interested in and attending for BZA. We do have a quorum for our Planning Commission, so we will address, first thing is last month's minutes. So March minutes, Diana sent those out to everybody except me on Monday
well,
of last week.
I got them.
And then I got mine on this Saturday, so.
Oops.
But anyway, so did anybody have any issues on the minutes that she sent out?
Nope.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the minutes from March.
I motion.
Hi, Cynthia.
I was over there working and lost track of time. So.
Gotcha. Okay, we were just talking about minutes from last month, so did you get the minutes in an email? Excellent.
Thank you.
Alright, so I need a motion to accept the minutes.
I motion.
Alright, got a first motion?
I'll second.
Got a second motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are accepted from last month. Alright, so as I said, Dave is not present, so we won't address the wayfinding signs. I'm not too sure if he's made more progress. I know last month he gave us a handout with some different ideas. Again, if anybody came up with some suggestions on artwork or design, those kinds of things, please feel free to email those to Dave, and he can start working on figuring out cost of what it's going to be to put that design actually onto a banner that we'll be able to put up. Any questions or thoughts on the wayfinding signs that we've been working on from anybody? Okay, the next thing, I talked with Mary Straughter, that's the planner from Banning Engineering that we've been working with on our zoning and UDO update, And she told me last week that she had made about 500 notes on her current UDO based on feedback from us and just herself perusing through it.
And I don't mean, sorry Doug, I don't mean to seem dense, but I was lost last time. What the heck is UDO?
UDO, Unified Development Ordinance.
Okay,
So several years ago, we combined our subdivision control ordinance and our building ordinance into one, which is why we call it a Unified Development Ordinance.
okay,
And so that process just simply combined the two documents. It didn't like go through it to see what kind of information in here was appropriate, building standards for the town of Clayton versus what wasn't. So we've discovered some things along the way of, okay, why is that in there? Or why does it say that? Some issues that have come up, sign dimensions. So business in town comes and says, I want to put a sign up, and our UDO says, well, you can have a 3x5 sign, and that's the maximum in our
Okay.
UDO.
okay,
However, when Rob was our chair at the time, Rob kind of went around town and he's noticed that we have lots of businesses with signs bigger than that. So why do we have a UDO that says 3x5
okay,
when that's clearly not what we're practicing? So, we've made some adjustments along the way, but there's still some things in there that are kind of like recently when I was looking through it, there we have for the downtown business district, we have in there a statement that allows for an assisted living, but it doesn't allow for a nursing home. What's the difference? Like practically, what's the difference between those two things? So
Right.
why would it have, so those are just some things that we've noticed we want to address. And so in that, it talks about residential zone, business district zone, commercial, industrial, that kind of stuff. And what's allowed in each one of those zones. What's our building standard? And so our question that we've asked ourselves, as well as this planner from Banning, is this really an appropriate document for Clayton as it's written, or should we make some adjustments?
okay.
So she's found, like I said, 500 different things that she made notes on.
That we might modify, maybe,
Huh?
that we may modify,
Right.
yeah,
So whether it's because it doesn't make sense or it doesn't fit with, like the example I just gave about nursing home and assisted living,
right,
or those kinds of things. What she's trying to do with those 500 notes that she's made is kind of categorize them, reduce them into, like subject matters for us. So she told me probably wouldn't be ready until May's meeting, just because of the extent of all the different comments that she's working on. But she did tell me that she was trying to work on condensing those notes into similar subject matter throughout that. But it's a pretty big document. If you haven't seen it,
I have,
you can get a copy off of our website, or I can email it to you. Actually, no, it's too big to email. Probably better to get it
I
off
can
of the
go on the
website.
website,
Go to
yeah.
our town website, townofclayton.us, and under planning is the UDO. So.
yeah, I watched February's meeting on there,
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. So that's what we're working on with that zoning and UDO update information. Anybody, come across any other pieces of information out of that UDO, then this would be where you'd want to bring that, or, you can catch Pete and talk to him, and he can talk to Mary, or I can, or however you want to do that. So, and next month, we'll have that 500 notes page to look at. The other thing that we've worked on recently, other old business, is the annexation question. So last month, we talked a lot about some of the results of our things that we got from the meeting in February when we invited the potential property owners related to annexation, and they brought up some issues, and so we had some questions to try and answer of what services is the town of Clayton currently prepared to offer to properties that we bring into the town. What services do we want to add that we could put on that list of these are services that we can provide. What's our plan if we annex, and like why would we do that kind of thing. So I don't know if anybody thought more about that and what kinds of things we wanted to discuss about that, but did anybody dwell on that much this month?
I did quite a bit. I listened very intently to the person who spent the most time speaking before the panel. And again, I brought up that several of the residents said that they needed more time to speak. And so I strongly feel like we could politely offer a time limit. I feel like that's crucial because there were people who left, and then those people spoke to other people, and those people have come in and discussed with us how they feel like it's futile to come to any subsequent meetings because they may not get to speak. So I feel like having people sign up like you did, but then limiting their time on the floor would help. I also feel like we have new information to bring forward because it counters what she was told, what the resident was explained. It was explained to her that Plainfield had no interest in annexation when that has already occurred. And since then, I had someone approach our business with a petition, as you and I discussed. And we did have a few people come in and sign it right at the last minute, trying to stop a particular bill that was going to prevent funds being paid for, that would allow the school to have some funds. Is that correct, Doug? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, the bill was designed to allow Plainfield to annex a subdivision that was not contiguous with their corporate limits. In Indiana right now, you cannot annex unless you have a 1/8 contiguous property line.
Okay.
So this bill was going to allow them to leapfrog over some unincorporated areas and annex that golf course and the surrounding development.
Right.
The amendment that was added to it about the funding was that if there was, once the annexation occurred and the redevelopment commission decided to implement a TIF, that the Mill Creek School Board would be allowed to weigh in on, do they want this TIF to happen or not? So the school board would have all the say in, is there a residential TIF going to happen in this development?
Right.
And so that's what that bill had to say.
But am I correct in saying that it's already occurred? As far as Plainfield has already assumed that land, that property?
No, that is not correct. They've
So
not
it's still
annexed.
it is not annexed yet, okay.
It is an unincorporated area of the Hendricks County. So it's outside of any corporate limits. So any property in Hendricks County is either unincorporated or it's within a municipality. Those are your two options.
Is it imminent that that's going to occur, or is it just the general consensus that that's going to occur?
If you talk to the town manager of Plainfield, he's 100% convinced they're going to get it annexed one way or another.
Right.
So that's
So-
what he's
Is
voiced.
that information we can bring forward, accurately bring forward to the new forum that we're, for the next meeting for annexation? Is that information that we can concisely bring forward? Or is that going to come across possibly as, again, what some people in the audience were referring to as fear-mongering? So we all are, most of us are under the impression that it's going to occur. We're either going to be annexed in, eventually by Plainfield or by Danville. So we're trying to create a buffer, is that correct?
Well, we cannot be annexed in because we are a municipality. So in Indiana, you
Actually-
cannot annex another municipality without that municipality first saying, we're gonna unannex that area. So the municipal boundaries of Clayton is safe. There's no way another entity like Plainfield or Danville can annex anything that's already in Clayton.
And that's what we were
That's-
trying to
But
explain
they
to the
could
crowd.
box us in.
Well, I have a question.
But they can annex right up to
Right, so
our
we were trying
corporate
to create
limits.
a bit of a donut, a bit of a buffer.
Well, that's what, my question is, I read something about if they were to annex the golf course and all of that, doesn't that create like a donut, it's to and from, so that gives them the right of way through Belleville? Or am I wrong, is Belleville
The-
a municipality?
The way that is, House Bill
72 or 3,
72. And so it's written so that if they annex a non-contiguous development like this one,
right,
that there is allowed for a right-of-way umbilical cord, so to speak, to be automatically the connecting
which would take
pathway.
them from 40 to 39 up to,
Right, so there says that's what, about 2.5 miles south of Belleville on 39 where the golf course is at.
so then what
So they
happens
would-
there? Is Belleville not a municipality?
Belleville is not a municipality.
So they would annex
Yeah,
Belleville?
Clayton is the only municipality in all of Liberty Township,
Right.
so
Okay.
we are the only,
So they would
Incorporated
annex Belleville at one
Right.
point, basically from right of way to right of way.
well, I don't know what that means as far as they would have this tether, but how wide is that tether? I mean, does it just cover the road, or does it cover the properties touching the road? Or, I mean,
Well,
there's,
and I
the
wonder
law
because-
is not very specific on what that means, they just have a tether. So it could be just simply the paved pathway. So,
But my concern is it would take up a big part of Belleville, because I have friends who live on Church Street, which is 600, and they already have Plainfield water. So when you're looking at that.
yeah, all the houses
Right.
over there
So,
in
but when you're
Belleville,
looking at that, if they annex that passage to passage, wouldn't they try to go further where they've already put in water?
yeah, I can't answer that question because I don't know what that is. I just know that when I met with the town manager at Plainfield, he told me that in the last 10 years, Plainfield has not done any annexations that were not super voluntary. So, and a super voluntary annexation means the property owner initiated the contact with Plainfield and said, I want to be annexed.
Okay.
So that's what, and they said they have no intention of changing that process or that particular practice.
Well, cause that's my concern, for one, I don't know if, the whole to-do about the, putting the sign in the field coming soon, and then pretty soon the sign.
He did that.
That was a joke.
It was a joke,
Yeah.
and,
Yes.
but he had people going for
Oh,
like a
yeah.
week, week and a
That was his
half.
intention.
And then, I have absolutely no idea, but it made you think, okay, what if?
Yeah.
You know, cause everybody's
Well,
going,
and he put it out
let's hope
there
they're putting up a Taco
after
Bell.
they
Let's
were
hope they're
tearing
putting
down
up
that
a
old barn.
Right, right,
And so
and
everybody
then the
thought, oh,
spring
they're
sign
tearing
showed up.
specs
Yeah.
for,
Comes the Buc-ee's.
right,
You
so
know, so,
somebody
yeah,
said,
it
oh,
was-
it's gonna be a Dollar General.
It was
Somebody else said
hilarious,
it was
I
gonna
loved the
be-
idea,
Tattoo
but
parlor.
it made
Right.
you think, what if there really had been a Dollar General going in there, or a McDonald's, or a, do we really
Yeah.
want that?
And
You
I
know?
had a long conversation with Mr. Mark Brenneman, and he said Dollar General has contacted the Brenneman
I
family
figured.
multiple times.
Right, right.
Trying to get them to sell. And they have all said, we don't want our name associated with a Dollar General, so we tell them no every time. So, I mean,
It was just adorable, and because my neighbors and people know that now I'm coming to these meetings and they have joined, they're all like, Terry, what's going on? Terry, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't know, you know? And I'm like, then the spring sign showed up and I'm like, oh, it's a joke, it's, you know.
not to, I mean, I don't wanna belittle that, but none of that really has anything to do with our plan or our future plans of trying to annex here. And, you know, the feedback that I got with talking with Mark Brenneman was that saying we want to annex just for the purpose of defending against Plainfield annexing is not enough of a reason for him.
Right.
So if they were to agree to an annexation, they would want more of a vision of what is Clayton doing for us? What is Clayton offering? So just saying, oh, well, we want to, you know, block
Right.
Plainfield from annexing is, to them, that just seems like you're just doing an annexation war. And so why would they want to be in the middle of that?
And that's a very fair statement. I know there's gonna be a myriad of ideas and preferences for the town. I absolutely feel like progress and growth is imminent, and people can either embrace it or not. But if we create a possible vision where they feel like they're an integral part of helping design the development, so that we do continue to feel as if we're a small town, we do continue to feel like we have some voice, the small person like me, like my husband, we have a voice in how things will look. I think that empowers people. It also settles frayed nerves and fear. So, for instance, Brenneman saying, I want nothing to do with having another Dollar General. We have one right there in Stylesville. They took down a gorgeous barn for no reason. I don't know if the Dollar General had anything to do with that. I know we got an excellent piece of wood out of that barn, but that barn was in great condition, and then nobody ever did anything with it. And I think that disappointed some people. I'm not originally from here. I didn't have any emotional ties to that barn, other than I absolutely love old buildings, old barns, and old houses, and old people. But old dogs. But I love that. So I never understood why that was cleared, because apparently that was a very historical, you know, kind of a landmark for that area of Stylesville.
Money,
Yes,
That's why.
Oh, really?
that's why it was,
Because they pieced it apart and didn't make hardly anything off of it. I know, we got a gorgeous piece of wood that was worth 10 times what we paid for it. So, my point is, if we kind of help people, if we create a vision, if we create a sort of a bit of a mural, sort of a future ideal look that is based on ideas of several people. Obviously, you're not going to appease every single person, but if you say, hey, would you like to increase the park? Hey, would you like another simple, smaller park that might be just for sitting and viewing and enjoying? Hey, what businesses would you like in here? I know, as a business owner, I welcome other businesses. I don't want it to turn into a bustling city, but I may not have any say-so in that. I think growth as far as home development is fantastic, and this is nothing against small homes or developments like Mr. Dwayne Lane has done, but I think we need something else besides just, let's see how many tiny 2 and 3 bedroom homes we can cram in a very small space. I think we need an area that will give other options. I don't think they have to be $1 million homes like they're going to be at the golf course, but hey, to each his own, whatever floats your boat. I'm just saying, if we give our town and our citizens and our business owners an option to kind of play a role in that decision making, I think that would be fun. Whether it's from landscaping, a common ground, or it's helping to decide on how we want those unifying lights to look in our historical district. I think deciding on, taking a vote on, hey, how would we like those historical lights to look that add that ambiance and that charm? How do we want the planters to look? Would somebody like to be involved? Is there a particular group, a Girl Scout group or Boy Scout group, or a bigger organization that would like to be in charge of helping to fill those planters? Are we going to use perennials? Are we going to use just annuals? Will it be a combination? Will there be a water fountain somewhere? How we want to design our plaques that discuss our historical buildings? Those sorts of things. If you give people a little bit of a voice, I think it incites excitement rather than fear.
involvement.
Right.
So that's just my opinion.
And we do have so much opportunity. I had a lady come in the store, me working my one little day, she came in the one nice day we had, I don't know which day that was, but, cause it's so up and down. But she came in and asked me if I could tell her where the park was, where the sign comes in, would have been nice, you know, and I'm like, oh, you're almost right there, and she was telling me how she and a friend have their granddaughters once a week, and they would go to the Danville Park, and it was just so busy. They heard that we had this nice little park out here, and they wanted to check it out and see, because they didn't want so much busy, and because their granddaughters are small. And I thought, that's awesome, you know, people are talking about our park, and, you know, and the signs coming in will be awesome, because they go, oh yeah, oh, the park's right there, you know. So it was kind of cool, you know, talking to her. And
Yeah, and believe it or not, Lambert Park has several Google reviews. It's got a 5.0 5-star rating, so
Right.
I thought that was cool. And we rent the, you know, facility and that kind of stuff, but yeah.
So, Doug, I think what you was wanting the last time was for us to think of things that we could tell people that if they annexed, or if they came into the annex, these are some of the things that you get by being a Clayton resident. And I thought of two things. One is, and actually it's kind of a question, do people who live in town get a discount on renting? Okay, so that's one thing. It might not be big, but
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we have two different rates for the rental of that facility, and we have a Clayton rate and then a
Yeah.
non-Clayton rate. Yeah.
And the other thing is, Cynthia said something and kind of stirred in my head. If you're annexed, you then become available to be a town board member or
Yeah.
sit on one of our boards to help mold the future Clayton area. So,
Absolutely.
Definitely.
that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yep. I like that. Those are good ones. Hopefully our record keeper has written those down. Good. All right. Anybody else got more to add to that? Then Tom, you're kind of quiet over here.
I'm always quiet.
He says, I like it that way.
It's the quiet ones you gotta worry about.
I mean, you've been in the Clayton area for quite a while, so you've seen changes.
I grew up in Belleville, in the Belleville Addition.
Okay.
Started there in 1959 when Dad moved out there. And honestly, when I was growing up, I never came to Clayton except to the school to play basketball and baseball. But and I like Clayton because it's small and you don't have a whole bunch of busy people around. You know, it's a nice little community.
Right.
Well, and I'm with Tom.
So
That's why we moved out here, because we wanted out of the city into a small town, and we moved out here, and I wanted to thrive. Like, I'm in total agreement, more businesses, but we still want it to be a small town.
Sure.
Where, you know, you enjoy coming home and not having all of that, although I do live off 39, so like Leanne, we get a lot of sirens. I get more sirens off in this house than I ever got in Indianapolis.
lots.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
well, and that brings up some great points. I know when American Structure Point did their surveys for this comprehensive plan, on page 32 and 32 and 33, they talk about some of the feedback they got, and on the top of 33, they talk about the small town feel that people love about Clayton. And I think that we need to be conscientious of that in everything that we talk about with this, is how do you grow but still hold on to that small town feel. And you know, part of it can certainly be that, you know, even if we annex, you know, we're not looking to put 600 vinyl homes on, you know, James Penner's property down here, right? We're looking to control the growth in a way that still preserves what we love about our small town, and that's the small town feel. And that's kind of what led me to this booklet that I printed out and handed out, is the places, or the sense of place is what I emailed everybody. And that terminology kind of caught my attention when I was looking up stuff for this. And, which some of you, grew up in this area, but I grew up in, a really very sparsely populated part of southeastern New Mexico. And when I go home, then you kind of, when you drive down that street that you grew up on, you're like, all the feelings of that come back. People get that here when they've grown up here. So whether it's Belleville or right here in Clayton or that kind of stuff. So how do you, how do you make that tangible enough for people to say, that's what this planning commission wants to preserve? Is that at the top of our list, kind of a thing? Or is it something that we push to the back burner, in the name of progress? So you have to balance that and figure out, how do I articulate that to people when I'm talking about what we're doing here? So, and whether it's the fact that we have people on this planning commission who have lived here for most of their lives and have established, roots that are, beyond just the physical. There's that emotional tie. And so that, is one of those things that you just got to figure out, how do we present that as part of our vision, that's an important characteristic. I mean, a few years ago we talked about remodeling this building, even this meeting room, and so there was the debate, do we get rid of these church pews? So it was kind of like, some people were like, what difference does it make? And then there were other people like, well, that's the whole purpose that we left them in here, for the character that comes with that. This used to be, Clayton Christian Church, and then when they sold it to the town, we decided that should stay part of our character in this room. And I think that's important to communicate that and make sure that that's part of the message in everything we talk about.
I think that's wonderful. I think we express to them that there's a way to marry the two. That you can take an old building and you can maintain the criteria, the features that were so dominant in a building, and marry that with updated features that are more functional, that allow for versatility, that allow for people to be, a large number of people to be in the same space safely. So you can marry those two things, like we have done with Miss B's Teas and with Laura Appleby, Art Gallery, and with Copper Top, and with Davis Floral, with a lot of different businesses. You have these beautiful old structures, and in many cases we're in varying degrees of dilapidation and decay, but you could just gut them, but we didn't, and a lot of people haven't. Same with beautiful homes. A lot of people have maintained that character, but made it so that it is modern day functional, which that's just as important. So marrying those two ideas and letting people know that we're going to maintain as much character as we can, so those wonderful memories are evoked and still have functionality, still have a future, still have good heating and electricity and that sort of thing, safe sidewalks. You can marry those. You can have that juxtaposition of that old and new coming together and creating a space that evokes what we want it to evoke, that creates an ambiance that we're looking for, that provides that nostalgia, but is also beneficial and appropriate for modern day use. So I feel like, again, involving our residents and helping to make some of those choices, making it fun. These are our three options. We're going to take a vote. How would you like it? Or what are some, just have a preliminary meeting where we say, what are some ideas that you'd like to see for Clayton and the surrounding areas? And break it down into categories. There's the visual aspect. there's the landscaping aspect, there's the roadways. What ideas would you like to see implemented in creating more of a community safety net, whether it be a food pantry that's enlarged, or a community center, or help with daycare, or some sort of free resource. Again, I think it's crucial that I love what we've done so far with the parking lot, but I feel like we need to expound on that. We need that, we need a shelter, we need a public restroom, we need to finish what we had initially started, so that we have that, that trailhead. I feel like just that almost will anchor things, like when we start there and we show them that, okay, these are the options for it, and then we take another little small area, okay, we start there. But I think bringing somebody in and you can also do it on an app, on a computer, but you can kind of move things around, with a great program that allows you to create sort of an AI situation and then present it. That can be printed off and enlarged and hung up, and people can vote. But I think having that preliminary meeting where we just tell people, we really want your input. We want everybody's input, and then we break it down into subsequent meetings. And each time we have an agenda that we're trying to accomplish, but it gets us towards that goal faster, so that we're not just kind of talking about it and then we don't really get to do anything, with further progress. So I don't know. I think that was perfect what you said, and I think that that's what everyone's wanting. Even those of us who are transplants that have only been here a decade and a half, we obviously were seeking something that this held for us. So.
My first years, I grew up in the city in Indianapolis,
Me too.
Eagleville, until I was like 8. Then we moved to Danville to a farm, and I was there until I got married at 19, and we bought our house here. So I kind of feel like I've been here longer than I've been anywhere else, and my
Nice.
kids are both grown now, and this is all they've known, and I've always loved that small town feel. I don't know, it's almost more like it's a town family,
Yeah.
It's different than being in a big city. Everybody looks out for everybody, and even if you don't know them, you say hi, you chat, and
I think that's a wonderful buzzword for it. I think town family is perfect. I think that's a nice moniker that we could put in our verbiage about what we're trying to create is town family. I like that.
It's like one time there was something that had, late at night, we had forgot to shut the back of our vehicle, and of course that it was like, I don't know, after midnight, we had gone to bed, and it was either a policeman or just a neighbor stopped to make sure everything was okay and, check on us. I mean, you don't get that just anywhere, and there's another time that he had taken out the ash and it had started a fire, and they, knocked on our door, and it's just, I don't know, it's like I feel like people have always looked out for us. We were like the little married kids, and, it's always been, I've loved it here because I always felt like that people always kind of looked out for us. And then for my kids, I never had fears for my kids here because it's like everybody, just kind of kept an eye out for everybody.
It's nice.
And it is true, because when I moved out here, living in Indianapolis and raising my kids there, it's a whole different world. My kids, we lived in a really nice neighborhood, but even so, stuff happens.
Right.
And my kids used to get so upset because my youngest would say, "Can I take a walk?" Ask your sister to go. Why can't I go by myself? Because there's safety in numbers. And then I moved out here, and you've got kids just riding their bikes down the street and playing out, and I'm guessing be home by dark. That's how we grew up, show up to eat lunch and be home by dark. And, and it's such a different world. Watching the kids out here go to and from, they ride their bikes to the store, and it's just a different world, and you want to keep that.
All right, anything else on this? These are all good feedback and discussion points. I feel like we have a good idea of, how we want to do that. We just have to come up with all the different ways we can take that and transform it from just our, verbiage
Ideas.
into our plan. So how do we fit that into all the different aspects of what we want to do, whether it's offering services, to people that we're trying to convince to be annexed, or just simply how we're moving forward with some of the things that we're talking about with our wayfinding signs or other plans that we have for the town. Does our town speak all of that to somebody who's just driving through, kind of thing? So what would that look like if we prioritized it enough to where it would say that to visitors as they drove through town, or come into town for events that we're doing, whether it's an outdoor market or other kinds of things that are occurring here. The music in the park, hopefully that'll continue to grow in popularity in Hendricks County, and when people come here, they find Lambert Park being what it is. It's really great resource here in town, and not crowded like some other parks. Then they can, although the more popular it gets, the more crowded it will get. But we've got to try to balance that and think. I mean, our park has got a lot of space, so there's area for people to gather there and not be right on top of each other, and they can take advantage of the newer playground equipment that we have there, and what we're doing with the new trailhead and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think those are all really great things to present. One of the statements.
I would like to.
Go ahead.
I know I've lived a lot of places, but I would like to see the lights strung across the streets like Coatesville has and Danville has for like the Christmas stuff.
Well, and AMO just did that also.
Yes,
They
and
had
it looks
AMO
just
added
very
Yeah.
home.
lights strung
You know,
across the.
that you wanna.
Kind of like you have,
Yeah,
Everyone,
that's one of my favorite areas.
yeah, it's just,
everyone loved it, they loved it, and I think it's a great idea.
yeah,
I think it catches someone's eye. You
it
wonder
does, and it
how-
makes you wanna slow down and
and
kinda
just-
look and see what's in that town.
Yeah.
I don't know what the cost would be, or, but, and it wouldn't have to be on all the time, but if they were, that's fine.
And I know Rebecca Ray, who's kind of one of the leaders in AMO, she said that they contacted Duke Energy, and Duke Energy actually helped them string up those lights. So they used their equipment to get it up high enough that no vehicles were going to ever tangle into it and stuff. And apparently they offered their services for free for that. So because they put a nice post on Facebook thanking Duke Energy for the volunteer help. And
That's
so
awesome.
I was like,
I think
So-
it just add a lot to the plate.
yeah.
So are we looking into getting lamp posts, something like, is that what you were talking about earlier?
Well, we were talking about having lighting in the historical district, like, consistent, old-fashioned, kind of like
I
lantern
love
lights,
that,
or we could
yeah.
actually hang a flower pot. I don't know if we could do it over the entire Clayton area, but the historic district we talked about, I don't know what the cost would
That'd
be
be
for that. But, I really wish Duke had done it for us. We contacted Duke.
Oh,
We
did you?
asked about- Yeah, we
For
asked about how much it
stringing up
cost
your
us.
lights?
We were gonna put a speaker and we were asking about additional, electricity, options for, an outdoor camera and other things, and, so we were able to string, we paid for all that, we paid for the cables, the labor, to have it strung across from one building to the other, and then we paid for all the lights, and, Duke didn't offer.
Well, they may
that
have a
would've been
different
great.
mindset when it comes to a municipality asking for
Yeah.
help versus a private business, but
That's true,
it's certainly, something to
yeah. Yeah, I
think
love
about
that.
if,
I think
I mean, the worst they can do is say no if we ask, so that's kind of one of those aspects of it. And so I know one of the things that caught my eye in my reading since last meeting was that you don't want planning to turn into just project management. And I think project management, is great. It's just that if that's all we do, then we're just reactionary and not moving forward with what are we proactively looking to try to do for Clayton. And so that's, certainly something to think about as we move forward with stuff. And I don't wanna, keep us, forever night just, dreaming of things, but in the coming weeks before our next meeting, see if there's things that you can jot down or notes in your book, or wherever, of how do we translate all of this that we've just talked about into our plan, into, the look of our city, the feel of our city, and again, maintain that small town feel, plan ahead for when growth happens, how do we control it in a way that maintains that small town feel? How do we move forward with other things, like you mentioned, decorative lighting or lampposts, or, some towns have really cool, like planter boxes along their downtown, or plants hanging from lampposts, or those kinds of things that certainly, things that add character to a town. Do we have a vision for that kind of stuff, or where do we want to go with, those kinds of things? And, every aspect of the town as it currently is was once just a vision that somebody had at some point in time. So same kind of thing for us, is we have this job now to, kind of move forward on the vision of what we're gonna look like. And, that's why we've got this comprehensive plan to work out of, and to look forward on. We have some great examples in town already, of properties that have, updated and yet still look, like that old town feel. I mean, from the first day I've moved into town, I can remember Davis Floral being, the landscaping and the property looks, just like what you'd expect from a small town, business and home, all merged into one kind of thing. And it's like that, to me, has always been, and then I've moved into a house, I find Dr. Tyner used to be there, the eye doctor, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could see what it looked like when
Back then,
he was, running his eye doctor practice out of there, I don't know, I mean, lots of people in this room are wearing glasses. Did you ever go to Dr. Tyner?
No,
So,
no.
so that's kind of thing that just kind of, it stimulates my brain of like, oh, look how cool that would have been to see that. To see pictures like this one up here with the railroad, and then Pete telling me he found pieces of the railroad track still on the ground over by the where the food pantry is, and when he was mowing there one time, and I'm like, that is so cool to think about, that kind of stuff still hangs out here in town as part of that. And
Well, because it was very interesting to read, I don't know how long ago it was, when the Republican put out that edition about all the small towns, Coatesville and Stylesville and Clayton, and talked about how booming they were way back when with the, the railway and this and that, things going through. And I thought, it's just really sad that all of that went away, in a manner of speaking, but also how big would it have become if all that was still there, in this day and age.
70 pretty well took care of that.
Yeah.
Interstate 70.
Yeah, Interstate 70, they started construction over in Richmond in 1963, and they moved this way, and as it opened up, it took a lot of traffic away from 40. So people moved, further away in their travel, so that, led to. But,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and I remember being a kid and 70 not being there, and my grandparents lived 30 miles north of Cleveland, and it would take us like 10 hours because we had to drive 40, and go through all these small towns and Amish country and all this, and 70 came through, and it's like 6 hours now. It's like, I wasn't sad.
All right, any other thoughts or comments for the good of the order, or anybody have any other subject matters they wanna bring up, or?
I do have a question.
Okay,
I don't know that it has anything to do with the planning commission, but there's a house on my street that is now for sale by Tucker, and I'm wondering, they show no pictures of the house inside, and I'm told it's going for like 85,000, so I'm
nope,
guessing.
it's sold,
Did
it
it
already
sell?
sold, yep.
So I'm guessing the price was
Yeah,
just
the
for
new owner has
land.
already contacted Jenny at the office here and
Okay,
said,
good.
how do I hook up my sewer? So,
Okay, well,
Yeah.
good.
I don't know if it sold for the 85,000,
I don't know, but I was just
it's sold.
concerned because I was like, it's just been an eyesore for so long
yes.
and not showing
I
any
was
pictures.
very happy when I saw that she put that up for sale, because we've contacted her multiple times. She hasn't lived there for years, but we've been,
Yeah, I know some
Wow.
of that story. It's pretty
So,
sad.
the good news is it did sell, and the new owner has already contacted the town as far
Awesome,
as what do I need to do next and stuff, so,
awesome.
yeah, they will have to do a lot of work to that property. If I bought it, I'd bulldoze that and then start over, I don't know.
That
if
was our
that's what
thought.
they're
I was like 85,000, that's, the land might be worth it, so there's a thought,
doing. Yeah,
but
yep, but not necessarily related to planning commission, but I did find that out today, that it sold already.
I was just curious, cause
Yeah.
it's sat empty for so long.
Yeah, years.
Yeah, and the one on the corner next to it, it's all boarded up and it has two, and it's like,
And that one sold last October at the sheriff's tax sale. They were behind in taxes for quite a while. Now, the new owner cannot do anything for a year with a tax sale, because if the person who was rightfully the owner of it before the tax sale, they have a year to decide to come back and actually catch the taxes up. So that's in a legal limbo right now while they wait. But it is boarded up because we were having problems with people breaking in there.
I'm sure.
So the town actually boarded that up because the property owners wouldn't respond to any of our messages. So the town boarded it up for safety reasons. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's good to know.
All right. Well, if nothing else, I will look for a consensus to adjourn. Anybody object to adjourning? All right. At 6:53, we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for
Thank you.